Was Queen Maeve of Connacht really just a jealous bitch? Dag de Yves agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And ní answer, not hard to say. Queen Maeve of Connacht has had a really bad rap over the last while in regards to the very famous central saga story of the Ulster Cycle, known as the Táin Bó Cuailnge. In many retellings or many translations of the Táin Bó Cuailnge, we have the belief that Queen Maeve is just picking fights, or Queen Maeve is all jealous of Ulster or jealous of the power and the wealth, and that's why she rallies the men of Ireland to come against Ulster and then Cuchulainn and Concover and all the rest of it. But when we take time to explore not just one particular story, but the entire cycle of stories, we get a much better understanding, a much deeper understanding of who these characters are and what are the real motivations that we have behind them. Because as with a lot of these tales and narratives, there is no clean-cut good guy, no clean-cut bad guy. It is all about understanding the influences and the pressures on each individual to then get a better read of what is actually happening. So, in order to really understand Maeve at the time of the Táin Bó Cuailnge, we have to look back to when Maeve took the seat of queenship in Connacht. Now, Maeve, when she was living with her father, was approached by none other than Concover MacNassa, King of Ulster, because he heard about Maeve and how beautiful she was, how wise, how talented, how capable. And so he was like, yeah, I absolutely, I want to have this woman. And essentially she's not too happy about that. And so we have an excerpt here, and I think it's really important to read this excerpt because this gives a good insight into the one of the core fundamental characteristics of Maeve and really helps steer a lot of the narrative as we understand her going forward. So the approach comes from Concover, and the response from Maeve is such: but I consented not, for I demanded a strange bride gift, such as no woman before me had asked of a man of the men of Ireland, to wit, without meanness, without jealousy, without fear. If my husband should be mean, it would not be fitting for us to be together, for I am generous in largesse and the bestowal of gifts, and it would be a reproach for my husband that I should be better than he in generosity. But it would be no reproach if we were equally generous, provided that both of us were generous. If my husband were timorous, neither would it be fitting for us to be together, for single-handed I am victorious in battles and contests and combats, and it would be reproach on my husband that a wife should be more courageous than he. But it is no reproach if they're equally courageous, provided that both are courageous. If the man with whom I should be were jealous, neither would it be fitting, for I was never without one lover quickly succeeding another. And so these are the words of Maeve herself. These are the words as she is approached by Concover, and she's like, well, no, just my bride price, in order to understand if we're going to have a relationship, you have to be without meanness, without jealousy, and without fear. But as we get into the deep dives of that, at each particular point, the point that Maeve is making is we need to be equal. We need to be equally generous, equally courageous, and equally without kind of jealousy. Because that is her nature. She is very clear upfront, very honest, and very open and very direct about what the expectations are for the relationship. Now, of course, at the time of the Táin Bó Cuailnge, everyone knows that Maeve is wed to a guy called Ailill. But Ailill is actually her second husband. She was previously wed to a different guy, and when she took Ailill as a lover, which was understandable, the other guy became jealous, which was a breach of the understood agreements of what it is to be husband to Maeve. And so she broke off the relationship with him and got with Ailill. Now, this is where we get to the challenging part of the Táin Bó Cuailnge, because at the start of the Táin Bó Cuailnge, we have this section known as the Pillow Talk. And the Pillow Talk in detail is this back and forward conversation between Ailill and Maeve about their wealth. And it comes from an off the cuff statement. Ailill is like, sure, isn't it grand that I'm so wealthy to be able to keep you in the style of living that you're accustomed to? At which point, Maeve, again, knowing her character, as we've clarified, is like, well, no, we're equally wealthy. You're not more generous than me, or I'm not more generous than you. We're equally wealthy. And at this point, it all turns into a topple because it says that they disagree over it. So it leads to the great counting. So both in the middle of the night, they up out of the beds, rouse the entire household. We need a count of everything. We need to know who has what, how many warriors, how many cattle, how many wealth, how many cups, how many servants. We need to know who has what. And so it turns into this vast effort of counting all of their wealth. And as the narrative and story goes, there is only one thing that they do not have equal for, and that is the bull known as the Fionn Vanach. So the Fionn Vanach, the white bull, originally belonged to Maeve. But during the wedding, the Fionn Vanach left Maeve's field and pottered over into Ailill's field, and it wouldn't come back. At which point, Ailill claimed the bull, even though it was initially Maeve's bull. So this is where it comes into this bother between them because he's like, well, I have the Fionn Vanach, my bull. And she's like, yeah, was my bull. And he's like, well, it's my bull now. And all of that narrative begins to seem rather petty because they're both very wealthy, they're both very capable, but there's just this one bull. In order to really break the back of this stigma around her being a jealous, envious woman or her just being an outright bitch, we need to look at the context here because there are multiple different types of wedding or union as listed in the Brehon laws of Ireland. Everything from the wedding of a day, a year and a day, where couples would come together, say at Bealtaine, and they'd agree to be man and wife in all forms of everything until Bealtaine next year. That was quite common. In fact, there were 8 different types of recognized marriage based on status, based on connection, based on duration. But the one at the top end of it was known as the marriage of equals, the union of equals. And so in a union of equals, two people of equal wealth, equal status, equal power who marry, neither of them lose wealth, status, or power. If someone with more status were to marry someone with less status, the status doesn't change, but the person who has more status still has the rights inherent to them from their status. And if someone has more wealth than the other person, they don't lose their wealth. They maintain the influence that they have based on their wealth because they have more. But if both people have an equal value and an equal status, then their opinions, their rights, their status, their expectations, their all of it within the very tiered structured ancient Irish society meant that their say was equal. Their right to voice, their right to express was equal. But in this circumstance, because of the Fionn Vanach, suddenly Ailill has more wealth. So Ailill's word, Ailill's opinion, Ailill's decisions have more weight or more wealth behind them than Maeve. At which point, it fundamentally changes the power dynamic between that relationship. What was based on everything we know from the part I read at the start, Maeve's core values is if you're equal in generosity to me, we're good. If you're equal in courage to me, we're good. As long as you're not jealous, we're good. But in this, there is an inequality. And that then shifts Maeve's right to be queen and right to have more say than Ailill, or at least equal say to Ailill in Connacht. So when we understand that, it's suddenly not just about a bull. It's not just about, ah, well, I have to have what you have to have. There is a lot more on the line here for Maeve if she cannot balance the books, if she cannot balance the wealth, if she cannot balance the spreadsheet. And so this is where she sends out all of her people, find me a bull that matches the Fionn Vanach. Because I can't claim it back. I need something that matches it, that rivals it. And they do all of the searching. There is only one bull in all of Ireland, the Donn Cuailnge, the Brown of Cooley. And this is where the conversation that sets up. This is where all of the beginning of the narratives. We're into the Táin Bó Cuailnge at this point, because Maeve is then put in a position to try and get the bull. But the guy who owns the bull is like, no, I'm not fucking selling you my bull. But she's like, listen, I don't want to buy the bull. I just need to have the bull until the bull makes a suitable offspring with one of my own cattle. Then you have your bull back. At which point the guy's like, absolutely, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. but things don't go well. The Donn Cuailnge, the Cooley Peninsula, is just in Ulster. And so this farmer who owns the Donn Cuailnge has the support of Ulster behind him. And when the Connacht men, who, having made their agreement, having agreed with, yeah, of course, we'll take the bull and, we'll bring the bull back to you, they get into their cups, and Maeve unfortunately finds herself at the wrong end of a drunken conversation by asshole men because they turn around and say, sure, it's a good thing you're giving her the bull, otherwise she'd come and take it from you. And because of the drunken pride and this overstating of things, the entire agreement falls apart. And Maeve's hand is now forced because, again, it's not just, oh, I want to have a bull because you have a bull. Her entire status, her ability, her power structure is all on the line here. And what was a successful negotiation for a contract for a loan of the bull becomes a forced circumstance where she has to go to war because her men, her representatives, have said that she would. So is Maeve just this jealous, badass bitch who's just like, oh, I have to have a bull? No. And the answer, not hard to say. No, she is Queen of fucking Connacht in so many different ways. And by her own words, which I read at the start, her expectations aren't that, men should be beneath her, that people should be below her. Her expectation is that someone should be equal to her, stand beside her, meet her where she is, meet her like for like, because that way there can be no reproach on either of them for sharing and being who they are collaboratively and collect as a collection, as a unit together, as a partnership. So hopefully this has been a bit of an insight into Queen Maeve. If you'd like to know more about not just Maeve, but also Ailill, as I mentioned, and other members of the Connacht heroes, characters during the Ulster Cycle, I did a class on it. You can go to the Irish Pagan School and look up the Heroes and Villains of Ancient Connacht. Actually, I'll put a link in below as well if you want to just grab it there. And you can take a full class exploring all of these different saga stories that link around this very powerful province during the Ulster cycle. If you can't take a class at the moment, that's okay. All you got to do is go to irishpagan.school/free. We have a year's worth of free resources there. You can pick up something and tip away at it in your own time to explore Irish heritage, culture, mythology, spirituality, and more. Until next time, look after yourself. Take care. Agus slán. Goodbye.